Good morning, everybody. My name is Deepa Sriram, and I am your webinar host from the Center for Faculty Excellence. And welcome to Trickle Down Communication, Engaging, Motivating, Inspiring Students. Before I turn over our presentation to Dr. Asen and Dr. Costin, I'm going to go ahead and go through a few housekeeping slides and just make sure we're all on the same page. So right now you're going to notice that the center portion of your screen should include the PowerPoint slideshow. And what's highlighted in the middle is actually where our presenters will go through and continue their PowerPoint presentation. The next three items you see highlighted in yellow include our closed captioning pod, which is on the upper left. The bottom left is our chat pod, so if you have any comments during the presentation or any questions, feel free to type it in there. I've already posted a welcome message so that you can see how it is. Everyone will have access to this. Both Amanda and Kelly will be monitoring this, as will I, so that we can all work together and address any questions or comments you may have. The third pod you see on the right just lists all our presenters' information in case you need that information as well. The next item you see highlighted is a small yellow box at the top of the screen, and that's our raise hand box over there. So if you have a question and need your microphone enabled, because all of you do come in with your microphones on mute, just go ahead and click on that button. You'll see a drop-down menu, and click on the first item that says raise your hand. And at that point, I will come over and turn on your mic for you so that if you wish to talk or ask a question, we can certainly do it. Okay, and throughout this time, during the webinar, if you have any questions or need any kind of technical support, you will see at the top right-hand corner there is a help button. You can click on that, and it will offer you any kind of technical assistance and some frequently answered questions if you need any help. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn the meeting over to, I think, Amanda, you said you were going to start. Is that correct?
I thought.
No, Kelly is.
I think Kelly. I am.
Okay, go ahead, Kelly. And if you would, please introduce yourselves. And it looks like we have a nice group of 6 people here. So welcome again, everyone.
Okay, well, great. Thank you so much. Well, welcome, everybody. And I know Amanda and I appreciate that you're interested in our topic. Today we're going to be talking about a variety of things: virtual learning, virtual communication skills, engagement. These are all things we're all familiar with as professors and teachers. However, we know there are different aspects when we're doing it virtually. We're also interested in hearing some of your successes and ways that you engage with your students. As we know, virtual learning can take place in a variety of capacities. It can be done informally as well as formally. And I'm sure you guys notice in your classrooms that that happens even in our classes, no matter what areas that we teach in. The discussion boards and the formal writing do have some different aspects to how we connect with our students as well. As we know, we're engaging through a screen. We don't have exact human contact. The written word is up for interpretation, which is part of the reason Amanda and I wanted to do this topic, as we are helping people communicate for a living on top of teaching people how to become communicators. Engagement means a variety of things. To throw it out there, do any of you have a definition of engagement in regards to your teaching? If anything comes up for you, please feel free to throw it in the chat box or share it with us. As you can see, the Firefox and Internet Explorer, I happened to find this picture on the internet, which I thought was quite apropos for the many struggles that many of our students as well as faculty have had with that old debate. So I thought that was just kind of ironic and a little funny. So communication is key. Now, that may seem like a simple statement, but as we know, talking or writing isn't always communicating. So if it's not communicating but still talking, what do you think is missing, or what parts could be missing? Amanda, what do you think are some of the things that are missing between just your variety of writing or talking versus communicating? What kind of differences do you see?
Well, I think when you're teaching online, you have to. I mean, the expectations for people to be better writers is much different than when you're live.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's one thing. So, and I think that it impacts us as faculty as well in terms of how much grading we do in relation to some some interaction we could have with students personally because we don't see them. And that's why I really like residencies.
Me too. I mean, I think the residencies are ways not only for us to kind of be our gatekeepers for our programs, but also to really model the engagement and communication skills that we're wanting them to learn. And also being able to kind of really see their passion for the work that we're teaching them. One of the things that I think can be harder to exude through the screen is that passion, and I think that's one of the reasons why we're focusing on communication. Word choice. That is something that is really crucial. I think a lot of people, and I'm sure all of us have experienced time where we've communicated via email or even informally via text where we've said something that in itself was fine, but how it's interpreted can be very different. So I've noticed that in my teaching online, I've had to become more cognizant of my actual word choice to make sure that implications, are not, what's the word I'm looking for? There's more room for implication with certain words versus when we're talking live. Also, they're not. Sorry.
Sorry, Kelly. Do you mean that this is what I have found in my classes? There's more room for misinterpretation.
Right. Absolutely. And especially since the nonverbals aren't coming with it, whether it's posture, whether it's facial expressions, whether it's even tone. That's some of the things that are missing, but also can be implied through the written word unintentionally. One of the ways that we'll get into that I always do that is trying to use my students' names. That just takes 1 second to write or tape, but it can make it all of a difference in feeling like you're actually talking to somebody. And always checking our writing for directness, honesty, and fairness. Because oftentimes, just as much as our students can get triggered by things, we as faculty can get triggered by things. We're not guaranteed that students are perfectly healthy communicators themselves, even though we'll have to continue to keep that in check with ourselves. And that can be one of the things that can be helpful professionally with our students as well as peers. And student interest can come in the word choice also as far as kind of inviting language. How do we talk about our subject? How do we, ask questions for them to keep thinking about beyond, the moment that they're in our classroom online? Are we encouraging them to think outside of their requirements? To me, that can come with even how our excitement is expressed in our responses to them.
And Kelly, I think both Amber and Cassandra also have posted some notes here on the left in the chat box.
I saw Amber wrote, slang expressions can be tricky, mystifying, and potential and tricky. Absolutely, especially when we have international students or English as a second language students. There's vernacular that can be used, or things that may seem like, what's the word? Euphemisms and things like that. So being aware of those and being willing to explain or rewrite to add to that. And also making sure that we don't do that, or if we do use one of those slang or expressions, also to explain it more directly and to encourage that.
I also wanted to note, this is Amanda, that in terms of, I appreciate Amber bringing up the international students that we all have. And something that's really challenging for me is that I know that the student understands all that we're talking about. In my case, would be mental health counseling, and is a really good student, but their writing is not, is a second language. And so finding that balance between grading a student that's writing English as a second language, but knowing that they know the material well is sometimes a tricky task for me. I don't know if anyone else has that problem.
I do, Kelly. I do, and that can be tricky. I know that we're also discussing the different modes of communications with students. So it's not going to be just in the content that we're delivering, through each week or each discussion post, but how do we engage them when we reply to them? One of the ways that I do that is in every reply, I will say something about what they wrote, but then I will also ask them and the class a question too. So I will leave each post with a question. Even if it doesn't always get a direct answer from each person, I honestly believe that anytime any of us as humans hear a question, our mind automatically starts coming up with an answer and a response. So to me, that can be like an additional layer of the way that we invite their critical thinking skills. How does your discipline of study, if it's not, I know Amanda and I are in counseling, for those of you that are not, how does your discipline change any of these factors, or have any of that come up as we've shared today so far?
And just a reminder, I'm sorry, this is the Steve, I apologize. If anybody finds it easier to raise their hand and would like to have the microphone taken off of mute, please feel free to just raise your hand. I can do that too if it's taking too long to type. So just let me know and I'm here to assist.
Kelly, I just want to interject here.
Sure,
Dennis
please.
wrote that sometimes he feels that he needs to overemphasize the positive because they're often lost or missed because there's no face-to-face interaction. And I find that as well. At the same time, it's another balance because you don't want to send a mixed message. You always want to point out something that they did well, but when there's things that they really need to work on, sometimes I overemphasize the positives and they miss the areas to work on, and that's just something that I try to balance.
Yeah, that absolutely, and I agree. Not having them face to face, they don't get that same connection with us, feeling like they're connected necessarily, and also we want to keep motivating them to keep trying. So where's that balance between, here are the things you did well, and here are some areas that still need attention? That can be a good or an interesting balance to find, indeed. I find that not only about overemphasizing the positives, but sometimes if, let's say, I have some of my students are pretty poor writers, and so I can find that most of the comments after grading it are mainly about what they need to fix, and sometimes I'll have to go back and find some things that they did well, so it doesn't seem like I'm just commenting on all of their writing skills. So that, that can be a balance too, about not wanting to completely disengage them from a writing standpoint. So I usually try to start with a kind of a plus minus plus and hope that they, like Amanda said, that they don't miss the message altogether.
Okay, this is Amanda, and Kelly's passing the baton. And I was thinking this morning as I was looking over these slides, how ironic it is that in this particular case, this webinar makes me a little bit uncomfortable because I'm so used to being either in person and where people could see my body language, or online where I've been doing this for 12 years. And I find that you become really used to being behind the computer. So this is an ironic twist for me, is that you hear my voice, you can't see my body language, and but we're still behind the screen. Anyway, that's beside the point. I just thought, I know for me, being online all the time does get kind of isolating. But anyway, like Kelly said, using the student's name as much as possible is really important. I definitely like when students call, call my name, just in general, and just giving positive reinforcement. But something I struggle with in terms of names, um, it's not really using names per se, but it's in the discussion area, and I'm wondering if people could either raise their hand or type in on this. Um, do you call out to students when they're responding, say great job, etc., or do you wait for those kind of feedback in the assignments? The reason I ask is because let's say 25% of the students are not doing really well and they're looking for some positive reinforcement from me. If I say great job to 10 students, then it's like everyone's waiting for great job.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes sense. It's like I feel like I have to say good job to everyone, and it's just not the case.
No, not everyone does do a good job. Is that kind of what you're pointing at, or?
Well, I feel like in the discussion areas, if someone does a really great discussion, I want to highlight that was like an awesome discussion response.
Mm-hmm.
But then I feel like everyone's waiting for me to do that for them.
Right. Yeah, I hear that.
So I don't know, that's something that I'm very mindful of, because students, when I say something like, if I point out someone's post as being really great, then people start wondering, well, isn't mine great? And
Right.
then I have to deal with that. So
I think that is what is different about the discussion post versus the paper that only they read.
yeah. Okay, in terms of using the plus, plus, minus, plus, giving feedback, there's a good example. That's an example that's on the PowerPoint, which is you say two positives, and then you say something that needs work, and then you end with a positive. And I really try to keep that model going. And I don't know what everyone else does, but this is kind of goes back to my previous comment about what one does in the discussion area, what one does in the grading the discussions, and what one does in the assignments. In the responding in the discussion area, I respond to what they're saying in terms of the content, but I don't do plus, plus, minus, plus, and give someone feedback on APA in the discussion area.
Yeah,
I do plus, plus, minus, plus in the grading area only.
Yes, that's what I was implying.
Okay. I know some people do the plus, plus, minus, plus in the discussion area so that everyone could be helped by that feedback. And I was wondering if anyone has found that effective. Okay.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you want me to jump in, but
oh, please do.
I absolutely agree that the way that I respond or reply to my students in the discussion board is different than on their actual papers that they're attaching personally. I find that I try to focus on the part that they did well in the discussion post, and when I ask that secondary question to the class, it's sort of asking it to them, but then I'm opening it up to all of them. So, and if there is, let's say, some areas that aren't up to par, I want to make sure that I'm not publicly shaming them.
Yeah.
That's one of my struggles with putting any negative feedback on there. If something is blatantly racist or sexist or homophobic, which I have had happen teaching counseling courses, sadly, that I've had to kind of take a pretty firm kind of, well, here's an education post, coming back to that. But otherwise, I try to keep it about, well, what the part did they do well to focus on for the open discussion, and then the more critique aspect on their private work.
Yeah. I guess my last general question or comment is, and I've experimented with this a little bit with some positive results and some not so positive. There's some students that are just amazing writers, and their posts are, just hit the mark completely. And I'm wondering, in your discussion areas, if you call out someone's work, ask them in advance, could I use your work as an example? Say, and to then write in the discussion area, I just wanted everyone to take a look at so-and-so's work. It's really a great example of a great post. And, call people out in that way. So I'll just wait for some typing to go in on that. Kelly, have you ever done that?
I have a few times. I mean, I think honestly, each class sometimes has prompted me to try different things too, depending on the students. I don't know if that's something too.
Yeah, I've had I've had positive results where people are thankful to see a really good posting, so they know what the expectations are. And I've
Hmm.
also had some defensive students, but
Right.
of course that's in any situation in any class. So
Hmm.
okay, I'm just gonna let me see if there are any comments.
I'm looking too.
Okay, I'm gonna move on.
Okay.
Hold on one second. I think in this area, was there going to be a poll on this, Deepa?
Not that I know of. I
Okay,
don't think
because
you
I
guys
see
are
it
doing a poll.
as
Were you going to do the
it says on
whiteboard?
my well on my PowerPoint notes it says KW poll short answer for each of these three questions, but I could just roll
Read
on.
them or
Yeah. Um, okay, inspiration for learning. How do you keep the energy to keep this exciting for you and your students? Like I said, I've been doing this for 12 years, and I tend to teach, over the last few years, the same courses, which helps me in terms of my time management. But at the same time, it could get really, really, you know, it could get stale. So how do you, and I would hope that that would not be apparent to students, but it may be. And I was wondering what keeps you going, keeps you inspired to do this and make you excited. Do people switch their classes around that they teach? I mean, what are some of the things that other people do? Um, and I think that's my main overriding question is like, how do you inspire students and how do you keep yourself inspired to make it inspiring for them?
hmm. That's a really good question, Amanda. I know
Thank
when
you,
I can
Kelly.
see.
Kelly, I feel like I'm on the Saturday Night. I feel like I'm on the Saturday Night Live skit or something. But anyway, thank you for saying that's a really good question. I mean,
Um,
kind of what I do is you know, I, every quarter is a different obviously group of students. There's always something interesting happening or some interesting situation the student has, and it's like the few students that really as add something unique to the class based upon where they live or their experiences really keeps me going. And I also am a really appreciative for the flexibility that this kind of work gives me. And so that's a real motivator for me that I want to continue to do really a good work and to be inspired and to just keep up with the literature so I could add stuff to the class that's, current, that keeps things current.
and I think just continuing to remind yourself, why are you in this field yourself? What do you want the new generation of our field, whatever it may be, to take with them? What's one thing that you are inspired to keep doing that you'd maybe like to pass on? And I think when my passion can come through my writing, I think the students are more engaged.
The other thing that I have found is that for faculty that are fairly new to this, and I don't know who that applies to in this group, that they spend so much time on the discussions and so much time grading, more time than they probably should, that they don't have time to make their courses, you know, um, inspirational or passionate because they're just so burnt out from spending way too much time. And so that's something that I always try to tell new faculty. It's like I'll ask them how much time are you spending per class, and inevitably like they're breathing and sleeping this stuff, and that's just not it's not healthy, and it does impact the class.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, in terms of for me, I think personality comes through on this. I happen to think I'm a fairly humorous person, and so I think I try to get some of my humor across in the courses, especially in the discussion areas. And I find that aside from the headshot that Walden takes of us every 6 months or a year, like I put more personal pictures up so people could see who I am as not a headshot, but that I have a life, that I hike and have kids and so forth. And I'm wondering
Mm-hmm.
if anyone else has tried that.
I haven't, but that's a good idea. Maybe that's something I could do as well.
Okay, I'm just reading. I'm reading some of these, so just give me a second.
Me too.
Okay, Cassandra asks about tips for managing time for newer faculty when they find themselves doing too much. Basically, what I would do, and I know Cassandra, you're in the mental health. I believe you're in mental health counseling, is really to talk to someone that's been around the block a while and ask them, let me like go into their courses, literally go into their courses to say, can I go into one of your courses and see what they're doing? And inevitably, you're probably doing 3 times what they're doing. It's not that the person that's doing, the experienced person is cutting corners. It's just that they know the amount of feedback that is, the fine line between too much and too little. And I would use the faculty in your department to really get a sense of that. And the only way I've learned that is just from experience. And again, the balance between what is enough for students to feel like we're engaged and what is too much that I'm feeling burnt out, or I'm feeling like the students aren't even reading my stuff. And why am
Yeah.
I,
Well,
why
that's
am
what
I
I
spending
worry
so
about.
much time? I hope that helps. Okay. Anything else on this slide, Kelly?
Well, what are what when we say what did we learn the hard way versus what, we wish we knew, and I think that's kind of what you hit the head on the head. I was just I wrote in the comment box is that I've been kind of consulting with you for years about this, that I think I fall prey to that too, about, taking too much time for certain things and, how to really balance that for both faculty and students.
Yeah, I mean, just as an example, and I'm just going to, for discussion posts, a lot of times my response will be, 3 or 4 sentences. And I look at, if I'm auditing a course and look at a new faculty and they're writing like paragraphs for each response, and I'll tell them, don't go there. And actually, what the students will get more out of is just, putting some current events that are happening in the field or your personal experiences. They love that, and I think that gives a lot more, like a lot more. It makes the course more personal, and students really thrive on that, as opposed to the mechanics of scholarly response.
Kelly, Amanda, I apologize for interrupting again. I just wanted to give you an idea of the time. We're nearing the top of the hour, so just a heads up on that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, hold on one sec.
Is this you or me?
No, I think this is me, but this is where I see that the whiteboard was going on. I'm just looking at Kelly's notes.
That's correct. Do you want me to launch it, or do you want to just talk through it since we're almost out of time?
Yeah, I'll just walk through it.
Okay.
Just to say that again. Okay, how do we challenge?
That's fine.
Okay, we're talking over each other. Okay, just to look at to reflect on how challenging students virtually is different than land-based institutions. Are the skills transferable and which ones? And I just want to add something really funny. I've taught at both land-based and online. And I think what's, for me, one of the biggest differences is that students are, I feel, much more upfront with you when you're in person. Because I have so many deaths in my classes every quarter that I believe it's statistically impossible that many students could have deaths in my class. But I'm not going to question it. It's I'm not in the business of asking for a obituary. Some people do that, but but I'm just saying that I think that's I don't know that students do that as much face to face. And I find that another
I
big,
agree. Sorry.
I think another, again, just I think another big difference is online requires so much more writing for students and so much for grading for faculty that, and it's for obvious reasons. It's, it's online. That's how you do it. But, trying to find that personal balance and connecting with people is what I find students like the best.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So that was my rush run
through.
Well,
And
as we, go ahead.
Go ahead, Deepa.
Oh, wait, go ahead.
I
Okay,
was
I was
just
just going to say, as we near the top of the hour, I just want to give people the opportunity to know that I know they have other things that they want to go through, but if you want to go ahead and finish up just as a closure, and then I just want to remind everyone that we did record this, and so I will make sure that everybody that's is participating here will get a copy of the webinar, including the slideshow as well as the recording. So I just wanted to let everyone know that, and so that way if they can leave for some other meeting, which we all have, we totally understand.
Great. Thank you.
I just wanted to
I am so sorry. I apologize. I'm used to these webinars starting at 10, and you are so absolutely right. It's until 11:30. I really apologize for that. It's my mistake.
Well,
I thought it was like, where's the time go?
Exactly. I was like, God, she really said this goes quickly, but I didn't think it was going to go that quickly. Well, I think we wrapped it up. I mean, no, it's fine. I think I'm wondering if we could just put the whiteboard up and
absolutely
get some experiences or.
Absolutely. Again, apologies for that.
Okay, so the whiteboard experience, and I love the whiteboard. It asks to please share some statements or phrases on how you show engagement or interest in your students.
And what you can do for all our participants is on the corner you see a large uppercase T. That's actually your text box. And if you click on that, you can go ahead and type in your answers to this, and it will show up to the topic that we have typed at the top. So again, please share some of your statements or phrases you use to show engagement or interest.
Well, I'm still kind of new at this, and I'm messing up what I thought I was trying to do, but
I don't know how to move. I know we talked about this yesterday. How to move them overlapping each other.
I'm moving them now, so just give me 1 second. Let me know if
how do you delete? How do you delete things?
I'll go ahead and if you need to, there's the third icon is a trash can. I think if you click on yours and then click on the trash can, it should help. If not, let me know and I'll.
It's my trash can is grayed out. But what are some of the ways, even typing or verbally, do you find a way to show that your answers aren't what I would call canned or, basic or nondescript?
Say the question again, Kelly.
What are some ways that, some simple ways that we can show that we're engaged and then not just like canned responses or, because they're not getting us live, we want to make sure that it's, not like a robot response or.
Yeah, I want to say someone wrote anchor feedback in the student's text. One of the things that I do, and this helps me to personalize so much, is I pick out something a student says, not something that they cite in the book or whatever, but something that they say originally, and I cut the sentence, it's just one sentence or two at the most, and paste it into my response, and I'll say, something you said really interested me, and then I'll put that quote in, and then I'll ask a follow-up question about that, and that really helps. The issue that I have with this, and I'm wondering what everyone's opinion is on this, is then do you then follow up to see if the person responded to you, because that adds another layer of work on my end, or do you just throw it out there and hope that they respond? It's because we track so much to see if they're doing X amount of posts, if they're doing APA, and so on and so forth. Students love when I pick out something that they wrote, and I ask questions about it. But at the same time, I don't want to follow up to see that they actually responded or even read it.
Well, right. I often throw them out as just open-ended questions to get them thinking. And sometimes they respond, sometimes they don't. I know that's been my experience, and I also don't go back and check each question I've asked. I feel like one of the ways is I want to kind of keep asking more questions to keep them critically thinking beyond the obvious.
Right.
Do we have any other slides that we didn't go through?
No, I think we hit them all.
Are you ready for me to go back to the PowerPoint stroke?
No, I think wasn't that the last of it? Maybe there was more. No, there was more. Yeah, we can go back.
Okay.
Well, and one of the last things that Amanda and I talked about was, as we know, Walden is very interested in social change and how that impacts all of the disciplines. And, I believe that social change is important no matter the topic or no matter the field. I was wondering, how you could be mindful of social change in your courses, even if it's not like a direct, obvious link. Life events, current events. Things going on, locally, nationally, globally.
I mean, I think, for the people in the mental health field, it's
easy,
fairly to do. I don't know what other fields people are in. I would imagine that it's not as clear cut in some other areas, but I'm not sure.
Well, it's not, but I do think it's still possible. I mean, like for business, for example, I think we can talk about how, different financial issues deal with impacting, people's lives, or.
Oh, definitely.
For example,
yeah. I think one of the best ways to do it is to share personal experiences and to, be current in what's happening in the world and share it in the class.
Hmm.
Whether it's related to the field or not, the major events that are happening in the world that impact social change and social justice, there's so much to choose from and so much to relate back to your field, whatever it is, that I just always go with the things that are actually happening right now.
Right. And with the 24-hour news cycle, it's not usually too hard.
Exactly.
Current events and discussing them can also help students feel like they aren't just a robot in the classroom either, that we're talking about things that are happening today as if we would if they were in front of us. And as Dennis wrote, absolutely, I think it's about the macro and micro practices, you know, of the world and how do they impact, academia? How do they impact the careers they're learning or the fields of practice or topics?
Okay, you want to move on to is this the last slide? I think there's another one. Oh, we already did.
Yeah.
So, I'm just wondering if anyone has questions or other comments, because I think we went through the slides fairly quickly. Um, One question I just throw this out there is, how do you convey patience when you're maybe a little exasperated with a student that's constantly has an excuse or is always has a reason why their work is late or and so forth and are really demanding of your time. How and how do you just convey patience virtually?
And I think that ties back to what we were talking about earlier about tone of voice and making sure that our words mean what they say, being direct, fair, and succinct whenever possible, to not get caught up in any of the aspects that aren't for us to be in. Is that kind of what you mean, Amanda?
Say that one more time.
You
Sorry.
know, focusing on being kind of succinct, direct, and fair, regardless of how they respond to us. Kind of having, being willing to reread and not to, because we can get triggered too.
Right,
Just
exactly. It's like we're all are capable of being snarky in some sort of response for a student that's pushing our buttons or is annoying or is just dominating the class. So it's
Mhm.
just really being mindful of that is really important because if I'm going to seem a little moody live, it's going to be even worse online because they can't see my facial expressions or anything like that.
Mhm. Which is
Um,
sometimes good.
Yeah. And I think Amber's point is a really good one that um, you get a chance to recenter your response or write your response over again or edit your response online where you can't do that when you're just reacting in person.
Right. Well, and you hit the nail on the head, though, and you said is be sure to reread what you write. Make sure that your, frustration or anger isn't coming through the written word inappropriately, because it can be easy when we get triggered by students who are inappropriate or, overly demanding.
Yeah. And I mean one of the things I wanted to make sure to say is that I don't have any current research on this, but I believe it to be true anyway. I think whatever your personality is live, if you're a really open person, if you're more closed and reserved, and so on and so forth, it's all going to show up online. Um, so, you have to really know yourself and know kind of how, like how people perceive you individually or in person may be the same way people perceive you online, and just to be aware of that.
And don't be afraid to consult, whether it's with another faculty member, your course lead, and to say, this is what's happening with the student. Am I seeing or reading this correctly? Because we're human too, and that's important to keep in mind.
Well,
Thank
I
you
think,
for all.
yeah, I think we've covered all our bases here, and thank you for being here. And if anyone has any questions, just type them in or ask to put your microphone on.
And thank you, everybody, for participating. And once again, apologies for jumping in and cutting off the presentation half hour into it instead of giving them the full hour. I guess we've gotten some really great information. And as I said, Kelly and Amanda's slideshows as well as the recording of this will be available. What you will see in your inbox is an email from CFE that will have the link to both items, and you should get that probably here in a day or two. We have a few minutes left, so if people do have any additional questions or comments and want to type them in or want your microphone on, please let me know. Otherwise, thank you, and thank you to our presenters for their time and information, and thank you for all our participants for coming today.
Thank you, Deepa.
And I also want to add, feel free to email us personally if you have further discussion on this matter or want to talk through some ideas. I know I'd be happy to help.
Me too.
Kelly just posted both their email addresses on the left in the chat box. Should you feel it's necessary to go ahead and get them from there, it will also be available when we send out the information on the website. Thanks, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, you too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.